if your response to indigenous resistance against an ongoing 76-year-long multi-billion-dollar ethnic cleansing project is to support the entity that is responsible for said project, which is the Israeli government, backed by the US government, with the claim that you believe in human rights, then human rights is not really your concern, or you don't see Palestinians as human at all. Because by staunchly supporting a government that is responsible for 76 years of war crimes, ethnic cleansing, more than 1 million people displaced since 1948, you are supporting ongoing human rights violations of the Palestinian people. And for those supporters to assume that what Palestinians are celebrating are civilian deaths instead of the hope that we can finally be free highlights how you presume us to be monsters in this situation, while expecting us to accept our own civilian tragedies of murder, house demolition, displacement, war crimes as casualties of war. Before I dive into the nuances of some of my thoughts around the armed resistance that is happening today in Palestine, I want to be very clear about this first and foremost. What's top of mind for me right now and always is how this is going to inevitably impact Palestinians living in Palestine. The attacks that they are inevitably going to experience at the hands of government-backed settler violence and government violence itself. Now, the nuance I want to get into is this. As more videos and images are being released of what's going on over there, I'm seeing some pretty horrific videos and pictures of gender violence and war crimes that are happening at the hands of armed resistance soldiers. Does Israel enact war crimes and gender violence every single day onto the Palestinians? Yes, absolutely. Does it make it okay that we do the same? I don't think so. What I'm trying to say is that the issue I have, because I do believe in the Palestinians' right to defend ourselves, is when men with power enact horrific, illegal forms of warfare. I don't think civilians deserve to be brutalized. I think there is a way to have an armed resistance struggle without gender violence and without war crimes. And that's something that feminists throughout history have pointed to whenever we're in the midst of revolution. And for me, as a queer Palestinian who is a marginalized gender, when I think about a liberated Palestine, thinking about what it looks like for people like me, not out of selfishness, but because I know we cannot be truly liberated unless we are liberated in all forms. And this is part of it. Some folks might get really mad about what I'm saying, but again, I want to reiterate that I do not support the state of Israel. I support armed resistance, and I hate some of the ways that it's happening right now. While also acknowledging that we wouldn't even be here in the first place if the powers that be and those who supported it listened to us during moments of nonviolent resistance. So no, I'm not blaming Palestinians, and I am horrified about how this is going to end up affecting us the most.
I am a huge fan of not talking, not speaking about things that you don't know shit about, right? Because not everything needs an opinion. Not everyone needs to have an opinion on every little thing. And I live by that philosophy myself, right? That is a standard I hold myself to. But I also love a good analogy, a good metaphor. I love a good, let's put ourselves in these people's shoes. When it comes to being Black American, you know, we unfortunately can really relate to certain stuff like colonial states, colonialism, oppression. Can, or at least we should. We should be able to relate to other people around the world who are experiencing some similar things. We should be able to have empathy. You know, it's kind of one of the reasons that Palestinian people were giving us tips for how to combat tear gas and, you know, police states when we were dealing with Black Lives Matter. So I say all that to say, don't be that person that would have said, oh, I stand with the slave owners. I stand with the slave masters when the slaves started rebelling. Some of these people out here, some of y'all, would have done that, would have said that, right? When Nat Turner had to get it on and popping, and all the other people who had slave rebellions, because there's an estimated 250 slave rebellions in North America alone. Now, what I can say is that when you are resisting a state, right? A calculated, oppressive force, a bloody force for decades, if not centuries for some groups of people out here, that resistance can also look bloody. It most likely will be bloody, because when you are resisting people who are shedding your blood and your people's blood and have been doing so for generations, the most likely response to that is going to be the same thing. Even when you do not have the same tools, the same support, the same backing, the same systemic forces that the suppressive force is using against you to shed your blood, you find any and everything in your power to fight back. And as long as there is that power imbalance between the marginalized group and the oppressive state, the blood shed from the oppressive state is not going to compare to the decades, years, maybe even centuries that the blood is shed from the marginalized people. And that's what our enslaved ancestors had to do. They had to make that difficult choice to shed blood for their freedom, right? And if I was alive back then, I would have been right alongside with them. But if I was there back then, if I wasn't one of the people alongside with them, or if I couldn't even, relate because maybe I wasn't in that scenario, I don't think I would say I stand with the slave owners. I stand with those who are oppressing them.
So yeah, Israel does a lot of really fucked up shit, but that's kind of what you'd expect from the product of a racist, imperialist, settler colonial ideology, right? You don't mean Judaism, do you? Oh, no, God, no. No, I'm critiquing Zionism, right? There's a distinct difference between Zionism, a political ideology, and Judaism, which is the faith that far predates that political ideology. Oh, okay, cool. So they're not the same then. No, God, no. Again, Zionism is an ideology that is far predated by the Jewish faith, right? And there's a long history of Jewish anti-Zionism occurring throughout the years. And, up until the 1940s even, Zionism was kind of a fringe political ideology, and a lot of Jewish people didn't subscribe to it at all. And even today, there's a lot of Jewish people who don't. Okay, so that kind of makes sense then. Yeah, and it's really important that we don't conflate the two, right? Because doing so is actually fairly anti-Semitic, right? To say that, Israel is representative of all Jewish people, or that Zionism and Judaism are somehow the same thing. Although, weirdly, that doesn't stop Zionists from conflating the two if it, helps them undermine the cause of Palestinian liberation. That's kind of a fucked up thing to do, don't you think? Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly important to differentiate the two, although that really hasn't stopped Zionists from conflating the two so that they can weaponize Judaism to give cover to what is, again, a settler colonial endeavor. Bro cannot talk about anything without blaming the Jews. Who the fuck is that? Yeah, I don't know. He just kind of showed up in the comment section. But this is kind of actually really demonstrating my point. Wow. Okay, yeah, so fuck that guy. Yeah, absolutely fuck that guy.